How did you unexpectedly find out about an illness you have? I woke up one morning with a weird taste in my mouth. Half asleep, I paid no mind to it. Mom walks into the room and says, "Honey, are you okay? You are coughing a lot in your sleep." I go to reply, because I feel fine, but my mouth fills up with hot liquid. I feel like I'm gonna puke. I run to the bathroom, slam the door behind me and splash. Bright red, bubbly blood. About a quarter of a mug of blood, smattering the bathroom sink. I must have stood there for a good 2 minutes, ice cold from shock. My left lung is gurgling like a drowning man. Because that is essentially what is happening to me. My lung is actively bleeding, and the more I struggle for breath, the more I am bleeding. My heart rate and blood pressure skyrocket, which is making it worse. I wipe the blood from my lips and go into my parents' room. "Dad, hospital. Now. You don't need to go to the hospital for sickness," he says. And to be fair, I was one of those kids that would make myself throw up because I hated school so much. "Get ready for school." "Dad, it's blood," I say. Not alluding to just how much blood there had been. My mom isn't good in these situations. She panicked when my hamster bit me at the age of 10. She turns into hysterics when anything like this happens. We live by the motorway. We had the heating on last night. That's probably why you have blood up your nose. If we went to hospital every time we have blood or dirt in our noses, we'd never be out of the doctors. More blood is gurgling and I can barely breath. Can't. Not nose. Lung. It's then that my chest decides to spasm a little on my left side. Ran back to the bathroom. Another quarter of a mug of blood. A huge blood clot falls out of my one nostril, like a messed up slug. I wipe my mouth, and go back to Dad. I'm not fudging lying. Hospital. Now. And that's when he realizes that I'm not kidding or faking it. Plus, I swore, I never pulled out the F word on him. I was a little shiz, but my dad did most of the corporal punishment. I have a heart condition. I hate hospitals. I would not use a trip to A&E just to get a day off school. He grabs his car keys and we leave. I'm still in pajamas, but with half a pack of Kleenex in the pocket. About 2 miles from the hospital, I gurgle again. I press the tissue to my lips. Dad looks alarmed, which is something that he rarely is. You could tell him that aliens have just landed, and they are taking women to impregnate with their species' dwindling genetic code, and that they plan on slaughtering all human males. He'd be like, "It is what it is." I pull the tissue out and it's sodden. "Holy. Why didn't you say? I didn't want Mom and your siblings to panic?" I nodded. "Okay. Fair enough. These fudging traffic lights. Come on. It's green, you fudging bish." I laughed at that. Big mistake. Another coughing fit. By the time we got to hospital, the bleeding had mostly stopped. I had quickly learned that I had to breathe shallow and quickly to give my blood a chance to clot. I was on a blood thinner for my heart, which didn't help. The doctor at the hospital thinks that I've just had a big nosebleed in my sleep, and that it just ran down my windpipe. I know this is wrong because I can feel it gurgling in my lung, and when I cough, it's easier to breathe afterwards. Everything that was in my lung when I woke up had been expelled, so something inside me had to still be bleeding. But I couldn't express this properly to the doctor for fear of the clotting of my blood will be disturbed and I'll start bleeding afresh. My hands were shaking too much to write anything more than a word or two. I tried. To be fair to the guy, he was newly qualified, and once they finally called a respiratory doctor, she was just as stumped. I had no prior lung condition. CF negative. I had part of my left lung removed at just days old young, relating to my heart, and I had had pneumonia as a toddler, but that was it. My lung had been otherwise healthy for 14 years since that first surgery. I was kept in the hospital for 2 days. I was given TXA, which thickens the blood and is commonly used for car crash victims, and was treated with strong antibiotics for what they believed was a severe chest infection. 2 months later, I had another bleed. I had been walking the dog, felt a twinge in my left side again, and cautiously spat into a nearby drain. "You gotta be kidding me," were the only words to my sibling, who were with me at the time. Marched back home. Fuming, I simply said blood. Hospital. Dad didn't argue this time. 48 hours of coughing blood, about a week in hospital, more TXA, so many more chest x-rays that it's a wonder I didn't gain a superpower like Deadpool or Spider-Man, a platelet transfusion, and a CT scan later, I finally had a diagnosis. Bronchiectasis. Caused by my childhood pneumonia. Most commonly seen in CF patients, which I am not, and people with COPD. It's when you have been so ill with a chest infection in the past that your airways have to dilate to compensate. Bronchiectasis is caused by your airways being dilated for so long that they don't spring back. Essentially, they're stretched out beyond repair, allowing for mucus and bacteria to build up in the affected area, meaning I'm more susceptible to chest infections and pneumonia. The pure blood I coughed up? I happen to have a small but very annoying blood vessel in that area. I don't even have to have a chest infection for it to bleed. Since my diagnosis, I had about 8 more bleeds. My last one was so bad, though not as bad as the second. I was sat with an oxygen mask on, had a coughing fit and the entire mask filled with blood. They embolized the blood vessel, but there's like a 90% chance of the blood vessel just growing more channels to compensate for the embolized ones. They've said that, if that happens, they will remove the scarred section of lung. It sounds crazy, but it's one surgery that I wish they would do now. It sucks when the bleeds happen, but it isn't just that. It doesn't end once the bleeding stops. I can be coughing up vile, thick congealed blood, depending on the severity of the bleed.